to that, Marcus, when I listened to a podcast about the overview effect, and then someone said the hardest thing to try and describe the overview effect is that all you have is words, and they are not enough to describe the feeling and emotions you go through.
You're absolutely right. I think I would like to have like a more broad-banded communication medium, and I think actually that's maybe where the A comes into STEM, so it becomes STEAM, right? Because art could be one of those ways that you could actually maybe communicate emotions more strongly. I think it's hard to be precise with it, but I think it's a super interesting reflection and observation.
Yeah. Well, welcome back to stage, Frida. We have a very esteemed sofa. We have the first fastest trained astronaut in history. We also have the first analog astronaut in Sweden. So I feel, very grateful to be here. But Frida, you were in the dark in your mission. So you were in complete darkness for 10 days.
Yeah.
How was that experience, and how did it impact your mind?
Well, for me, it took a little bit, almost 6 days to really get into that, stress. And we always have to monitor our circadian rhythm and our, heart rate, always, all the time. And, the other girls, it was quite in the beginning, after 1 day or two, they was we want to get off of there. But for me, I was really there as a commander. I feel like I had to have a role to really be there for my crew and motivate them, even though I felt also like I want to quit. But it was stressful, of course. But I think I couldn't have managed this with the girls that I actually had, because they were amazing. And of course, we did have our we didn't fight, but we obviously, because we were so stressed, we did have we didn't speak in a good way, we were angry at each other and everything. But we really could left it aside, we have a discussion and then we left it in a past and then keep moving, and was friends, even though 5 minutes before we actually have an attitude towards each other. But I think that's what's actually helped everyone. Because we did understand that this is not your personality, you're not a person with that kind of attitude. It's just because you haven't slept well, you haven't ate well, we have been in darkness for quite some time, and
a bit, and you're in a very confined space as well. Did you have any unexpected findings during your mission that were like that? Because as we saw in the video, you're in a very confined space for a long period of time with the people that you're joining you on the mission.
Yeah, I think those are very good points. When it comes to first adapting, that takes a few days, and one way of doing that, if you have other people around you, is if you focus on and help others, it will be easier to get by yourself. But it's also very important to be able to ask for help, not only help others, but especially if you're in a high-performance group where people normally want to, nope, I can do it myself. Sometimes it's good to ask for that help and get that, because you're actually helping someone else as well. And being in, I honestly, it didn't feel like a confined environment. It just felt like a very different environment. But the volume becomes so big as soon as you get into weightlessness. The small surface area that you have grows to a very usable volume instead. But the teamwork sounds very, very similar. It's interesting also that you said that the stress level lowered after about 6 days, because I would say somewhere between 5 and 7 days was where I could feel that myself as well. So it's interesting.
And I think that's also the whole purpose behind the analog astronaut missions that you have. It's to try and simulate the experience that you have, because for money, research, access, you can't just always send people up to space. You want to be able to do it on Earth as well. And that's, the fact that you both had very similar experiences, I think, shows the impact of having the analog astronaut centers. And we hope to see the first one opened in Sweden very soon by you. What was an unexpected mission you have, Frida? You mentioned about Captain Bucket, but how much did he test you? What did he do?
Obviously, he wasn't a part of the experiment in the beginning. And the crew before us actually said, just the night before, oh, by the way, there's a mouse in, don't forget to feed him. And it was oh, okay. And then when we came, we saw he was in a box. So we have to take care of the box, because it was clearly not a regular mouse box. And that's was the reason why he escaped so many times. And at first, we were so afraid in the first day, because we was like, no, we have to find him, because otherwise we are not going to sleep. And after third, fourth day, we were like, I don't care if he's if he sleeps beside us, he can be with us. And, but yeah, I think he took a lot of time for our own experiments, of course. But it was fun. Like in beginning, we was really like professional, and then at the end, we were like, you know what? Let's just have fun. Let's be here, because also it's quite dangerous to have a mouse around, because there's a lot of, electricity and that can really damage.
And you're in the dark.
Exactly. And but also like all the machines are very expensive. So like the AATC actually told us after 3 days, like, okay, you really have to find them, because we really worry about our machines. And it was like, okay. Then we put like cheese, I think it was, or something like that.
Yeah. And the purpose of your mission to the ISS, Marcus, what was the core finding that you had? And did you gather any other kind of unintentional research while you were there?
So the purpose were threefold: research and experiments, and then maintenance on the space station, and then also outreach and communication. And when it comes to research and experiment part, we did a lot of different things, both life science and tech demonstration and material science as well. And there are actually quite a lot of findings. One was we had stem cells up for medical research, or actually more basic research on stem cells and how they are affected by microgravity. And one unexpected finding, I think, was that some of them became more resilient after having been in microgravity. They were expected to not feel so well because I was delayed up there for a few more days, which I found awesome. The stem cells did not, or actually they weren't that bad, but the research team was worried. And then other small findings that triggered more medical questions when it comes to how you actuate your muscles, for instance. After a couple of days, I felt a slight neck pain or strainers in the neck. And after a while, I figured, maybe that's because we're looking at the iPads, but that's kind of weird. Why doesn't that happen? Because everyone is looking on their phones and iPads, right? But on Earth, of course, you have assistance by gravity. Up there, you do not. So you're starting to use new muscles that triggered a discussion and reported back to doctors. So,
Fascinating. And Frida, you spoke about that you had one of your missions was also, it wasn't your core mission, but it ended up having some very interesting findings about how to save water, which is obviously a very big topic because you have finite resources. And your team actually made a huge kind of innovation in how to find water. Could you tell the audience a bit about that?
Yeah. Well, like the mission before us had only that as their mission, to how to help astronauts save water. And afterwards, they kind of gave us a little bit of tips. But then we did not have a functional toilet. So in the end, even if, sorry for everyone if it's a little bit gross.
Speak about innovation. Share the details.
But yeah, after a while, when you don't flush it, it's gonna be, a mess. So, and we have to test our pee every single day. So, like in the morning. So, and then we waste it. So afterwards, I told my crew, but instead of wasting it, we can save it. We have to pee on a bucket anyway, so we can just save it in a big tank. So there we use it as a flushing system. So yeah. That's
and how much water did you save versus other crews?
I don't quite remember, but it was a huge difference. Yeah. Because they use regular drinking water to flush the toilet, but we find that as a solution to not waste, our water, so we can actually need.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting innovation.
Yeah, and a lot. Yeah. And those are the things you struggle with in space as well, right? So on the ISS, we reuse 97% of the water when it comes to pee, sweat, and everything. That's why it's super important to have everything to dry. So, if, for instance, if you had like a bag of something that you drank, maybe you made a drink of sorts that you didn't like, or if you lost a bag because things floats away there, and then you find the bag a few days later, you might not want to drink that, but you cannot absolutely not throw it away. So you take a towel and you squeeze that out, and then you hang the towel to dry to get into the ventilation system to then reclaim the water, which is being done in a very efficient way. So the standing joke is that yesterday's coffee is tomorrow's coffee, which is not a joke.
Not really a joke when you're on the ISS.
Not really a joke, yeah. But it tastes great and it works perfect. It's actually more clean than a lot of the water on Earth. So yeah.
I'm very sure about that. And Marcus, you've spoken a lot about openly how you dislike how a lot of people phrase failure and to fail, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs here who may not be going up to the ISS, but they're definitely very innovative in their way of thinking. And one thing that you have to consider when you are both a fighter jet and an astronaut is how can it fail? And that's just a fact. So what's your approach on why you don't like how people are afraid of failure?
Yeah, a lot of times you define, if you want to get somewhere, you're at this point and you want to get here, if it's knowledge or if it's business or whatever it is. And then if you start walking that path, if you abort before getting here, a lot of times that's called failure. To me, if that would be a failure, then it would be true that walking here costs something. So it costs, but it wouldn't build any value. If that would be true, like a cost, and all the value comes here, then maybe you can call it a failure. But if you're increasing the value along the way, as long as you cost-wise and value-wise are kind of on par here, or even, which I think is true a lot of times, you take a little bit of cost here and maybe not value, then get a lot of value here, and your cost is actually lower than the value you built. If you abort at that point, still not a failure, you learned a lot, right? You built value even. Yeah. And a lot of times you also have to walk a path which you might have to walk back because that was not the path to take, but now you know that. That's also a value. So I think when it comes to failure as something negative, I think we just have that wrong, and that keeps us away from taking risks that we should take. A lot of times I find that we are more afraid, it's more important to not fail than it is to succeed. And I just, that will not build progress.
Yep.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think that's something we should carry with us. Yeah. Frida, what are you most excited about when it comes to space innovation? Or what research do you think is most needed in the next couple of years?
For me, diversity is really, really important. I fall in love with Dalia's experiment, because when we were there, she was like, Frida, I want to do an experiment here. We all come from different background. Natalia from Poland, have blonde hair. Me, Latin American hair, and she has African background. So we wanted to see how our hair actually are. How to maintain it in a hygiene and everything. Yeah. So for me, I really fell in love. That's really important, because in order to actually send more women of color to space, it's actually really good to actually do analog mission that really reflects that too.
100%, and I think especially what we've just spoken about, the importance of water and how do you dry things, how much water are you consuming. Of course, the different texture of people's hair has to be considered when you think about that. Final question to both of you. You both made space, pun intended, in your busy calendars to come today. Why was it important for you to be here today, Marcus?
To me, it's important that people are, or that we are interested in building new knowledge, progress, building. This would not have been possible without those tech innovations. And those tech innovations leads us to places where we expand our knowledge and where we can be. And when it comes to diversity, I think, so a lot of times you say innovation happens when two different worlds meet and when two different ideas meet. So if we wouldn't make sure that we have diversity, that innovation will not happen by definition, right? So it's, so I think, to me, that's clear.
Yeah? What about you, Frida? What made you want to step on stage today?
For me, a lot of people assume that I come from a very privileged or rich family, or that my parents have helped me with school, or, So for me, that's why I'm really transparent with my background, to tell people, no, I don't come from a rich family, my parents don't have a university degree, and that also, struggles too. Like, I'm not the smartest in my class, and you don't have to be a math genius or physics genius to be able to study those. Like, if you're really passionate about it, then you can actually ask for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is our time up, unfortunately, but we are so grateful that you joined us today. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, sharing your knowledge. I know you'll both be hanging around for a bit during the mingle to be able to speak to some of the guests, but in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us on stage, and give them a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Tus gafas. Thank you so much.